Fernwood area. This is Brian Bates calling the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood Area Planning Committee together. And I want to welcome everyone who is here. And let's start with introductions. I'm just going to go down the list as I see people. Mr. John Ruggles.
Okay, John Ruggles here, Planning and Zoning Commissioner for District 2.
Thank you. Jim Clifford.
Jim Clifford, Planning and Zoning Commissioner for District 4, and I will be co-chairing with Brian this evening when he needs some assistance.
Thank you. Liz Baldwin.
Liz Baldwin, District 4, been on this beautiful committee since inception, been out here 26 years, excited to get her done.
Thank you, Liz. Dave Browning. Dave, are you with us? Audio problem. I can hear and see you, but you can't hear me. Well, thank you, Dave. Dave has been on the committee since the beginning and has been a very valuable member, as has everyone. Let me continue. I will go to Bernice.
Hi, I'm Bernice Carver. I really hope that we don't rush through this and that we make sure that what we do is what the community wants. Thank you.
And I agree, we need to work on what the community wants. So thanks for bringing that up. I noticed that Supervisor Vasquez is with us. Supervisor Vasquez, would you like to share shortly with us?
Turn on.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Geronimo Vasquez, Supervisor District 2 and current Vice Chair. Glad to be back here with you. I talking about trips. I just came back from a trip to Alaska for the National Association of County Officials Western Regional Conference. And so that was really interesting. Got some ideas on some tourism area use up there and trying to see how we can apply it down here. Really excited to see you guys moving forward. It was really exciting at our last board meeting when they were talking about the upcoming schedule that this area plan is actually on our board agenda towards the end of June. So hopefully we've gotten through enough and finalized this area plan so that it can come as planned to the Board of Supervisors at the end of June. So I just want to commend all of you for your patience and your hard work on this area plan. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that based on the conversations that I've heard, based on the different public meetings and input, I think you're very close to getting what the community wants. There might be a few minor tweaks, but I think you're really close. And so just keep plugging forward and just know that you've done an awesome job through some trying times to put together this plan. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to a good meeting tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor Vasquez. I want to note that Arina Contreras is also with us. She's the district coordinator for Supervisor Vasquez. I'd like to move on. Arina, is there anything that you need to share with us?
No, but thank you. Just good to see everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there, I do not see Supervisor Begay. Is there anyone from Supervisor Begay's office with us this evening? Okay. Jessica, could you go through and share with us who from the community is here and then who from the county staff is here?
Certainly. For members of the public, I've got Barbara Greenlees, Vicky, Russell Weedman, Sheila Walsh, and Andrea Garrett. And for county staff, I have me, Jessica Simmons, Melissa Shaw, Kelly Bingham, Arina Contreras, Geronimo Vasquez, and John Paxton.
Thank you. So we'll go to public comment session next. And you would have 3 minutes. Oh, I don't have my clock.
I can
So,
time,
yeah.
Brian.
Thank you, Jessica. If you wish to address the committee, excuse me, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself quickly and share with us what you would like to share. Any member of the community that would like to share, please do so.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheila Walsh. I've been in this Doney Park area for 37 years. I got an email from a cohort horse person, and I think that we've covered all of this in our community plan, but I'm going to go ahead and get it in the record because it's kind of an iteration of what I've been asking for. Maintaining the rural land use classifications as the predominant development pattern within our Doney Park area. Promoting project designs that are sensitive to the environment and that reflect Doney Park's unique interpretation of the mountain rural lifestyle. Continuing to permit horses and other large animals on our residential lots. Protecting existing horse trails. We have some long-standing, decades-old trails that I do not wish to be paved over. And of course, we strongly encourage any new developments to work with keeping trails and access for those of us that ride. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers what I wanted. Public comment. Thank you so much. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, Sheila. Any other community members wish to comment?
Yes, my name is Vicki Parks, and I want to kind of add to Sheila Walsh in that we defined last time that collective housing would be a 10 per unit. I assume you will have a glossary definition in the back. I would like, these things kind of get distorted down the road. I would like it to be defined in the glossary that it is that 10 per unit, and it does not define a collective housing as any multi-level complexes such as apartments. These kinds of living, urban developments, they aren't compatible with the rural lifestyles. Starts divide. So I'm looking for a better definition, I think, of collective housing, that it does not include multi-level complexes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Any other community member?
Yeah, this is Russell Weedman, and I missed open house and at least a meeting or two. So it's good to be back and hear what's going on now and what I have missed. And I have to agree with both comments from community members and from Bernice that this area plan, it ends up being what the community wants and not what perhaps a developer or somebody else might want. So anyway, thank you for all your work, and I'll be here listening very carefully tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Any other community member that wish to comment? Hearing none, I'd like to go back to our community member, Evelyn Wani. She has joined us. Evelyn, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Evelyn Wani, District 2. Hello, everybody. That's it.
Thank you, Evelyn. Let's see, and then we're going to review the March 10th notes that have been edited, as well as the May 12th meeting notes. And during this process, I may turn it over to Jim Clifford because I was not here for that meeting. So for the March 10th meeting notes, do we have any comments or anybody have anything, any committee member have anything they want to share on the March 10th?
What was the revision on the March 10th?
I don't know.
I can
Do
tell
you
you, the notes said medical type housing and it was changed to residential collective housing. Is that right, Bernice?
There were two more things that were in there that I would like to have put in besides the residential collective home housing. I would also like the convalescent and assistive living homes included in that statement so that it would read. There was a whole paragraph that I talked about, but I mentioned those. I did talk about those three things. My comment that was paraphrased says the committee should look at LU 7 again and discuss size limits and location limits for residential collective home housing, convalescent and assisted living home housing.
I'm sorry, was that how you want it to read now?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you read it one more time then?
Okay, the committee should look at LU 7 again and discuss size limits and location limits for residential collective housing, convalescent home housing, and assistive living home housing.
Okay, thanks, Bernice. I'll make that change.
Thank you, Jessica.
So
I have a question.
Yes, I do too. Go ahead, Melissa.
Go ahead, Brian.
My question is, does the term collective housing cover the other two dimensions that Bernice was speaking of?
They're different types of units.
Okay.
But my question was, and Bernice, this is back to you, because we went back and reviewed the video and that the notes were updated based on what we heard on the video. Did you have additional corrections based on our review of the video, or was this something new?
I reviewed the video also and wrote it down word for word, and I did say those three types.
Okay, all right, thanks for clearing that up.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the March 10th notes? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the March 10th notes as revised, please say aye.
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 Oh. Okay.
Aye.
Anyone? Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the revised 10 notes are accepted. Jim Clifford, due to my absence, I'm not familiar with the May 10th meeting. Would you please take us through that process? I'm sorry, May 12th.
Does anybody have any corrections to the May 12th meeting notes that was sent out to the committee? Hearing none, can we get an aye vote to approve?
Oh, I can't vote because I wasn't there.
You you have to abstain.
Aye.
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 I only see folks saying aye.
Okay, I can't see what people are putting up. That's why I asked for a.
Brian, I remember people are showing the green check mark that they agree.
Yes.
So it's on the
Yes.
screen. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right. So those are accepted.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so Melissa is going to share with us briefly well, Melissa, I'll just let you do it. It's about the annexation, city council.
Thanks, Brian. And this is just an update. We've been talking about this the past several meetings, and just to let the group know that the city of Flagstaff did approve the annexation of this parcel that you see in the hatched shaded area last week on May 17th. So that will be effective on June 16th. And you know, we will amend the area plan maps to reflect that changed boundary. That's all I had on that, Brian.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, let's move on, please. So the next thing we're going to do is to review the open house comments from our April 7th meeting. And then we'll continue to the September vision comments. As we have done in previous meetings, we will look at the comments. If the committee wants to consider that comment, please use the green button. If you do not want to consider that comment, if you think it's already covered in another section or is adequately explained, then please use the red button. Is that consistent with the pattern that we've been using, Melissa?
I believe what Rob was using is if the committee agreed to whatever change was proposed, that's where the green check was used. And then the red X was if they were not in agreement with that change.
Is that clear to all committee members? Hearing none, let's move on to reviewing the open house comments, please.
Okay, I'll need to exit this screen then and bring that up. Hang on a second. Okay. Okay, did they show up?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make them larger. And this first screen are the comments from committee members that were made at the open house. So hang on.
Melissa, could you please give us a second to find what we're looking at in what you sent us?
Sure. So this was a 2-page set of comments from Rob had a few, and then Bernice had some.
Okay, I found it. Thank you.
Okay, is this the beginning or are there additional comments?
Well, this is the beginning of that list.
Okay.
And the first one.
You need to scroll up a little bit.
Okay. The ones up here.
I would like to discuss 1337.
Well, okay, we're going to go in order, Bernice.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, so we're starting with 1298.
Well, remember the ones that were marked no change or staff change were the ones that were not going to be reviewed. We were going to review the ones marked to committee.
I would like to review those.
Yeah, those were the instructions.
That's where we're going.
Sent out, that you were to look at those and then let us know beforehand what ones that you wanted to review before the meeting tonight.
Wasn't that the date, the 17th? Let you know by the 17th?
Right.
Right.
Okay, so are we starting with Rob's comment? Yeah, I'm not sure where we're starting here.
So the areas highlighted in this pinkish color that says to committee, those were where we've left off. Those were the comments that have been reviewed. Those marked to committee.
Okay,
Because those, yeah, those needed additional consideration.
okay. So the first one, 1336, from Bernice, please consider access to all planned rural development should be made on county maintained roads. It is the number of lots in development, not the size of the lots, that will determine how much traffic and dust is generated. All PRD lots should be located on paved roads to minimize dust. And the county responded that paved roads is a listed standard in policy LU. I'm not sure what the number is because it's behind mine.
Okay.
Let me minimize that.
0.3.A.
I
Thank
was
you, Jen.
curious how the development out in Winona got approved on dirt roads.
Well, that's under a different document. So I'm not sure that pertains. I'm not sure what status that has with this document.
Well, this document should guide the P and Z, and if we put something in there about this, then we'll have more of a chance of having paved roads in these big subdivisions.
Not necessarily, because you're referring to the Walnut Meadows, and that is a subdivision. It is not a PRD, planned residential development. We have numerous subdivisions throughout the county that do not have any such requirement. Some of them have no services and are completely off grid as well. So think about that before you look at this and ask for what you're asking for. PRD is not a subdivision.
I thought it was 10 lots or more that are being developed.
There are two different categories in the zoning ordinance. Planned residential development is different than a subdivision.
Could you please explain the difference?
I'd have to have the code in front of me to do that adequately, and I don't have that on another computer, Bernice.
So I can jump in on that, if you don't mind. The policy, I'm reading in the text here. There is a standard in here that speaks to specifically residential zone changes should be done through the planned residential development, the PRD zoning.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, Bernice, you're right. That's for 10-acre developments of 10 acres or larger, and then it goes on. So that's policy number LU2. And then there are a number of standards that, and we've talked about that, that would guide a rezoning. LU3 is specific to new subdivision development, should comply with the following standards in Doney Park Timberline Fernwood, and that LU3A talks about design, and the last sentence of that paragraph is that paving of subdivision streets is encouraged to minimize dust. Now, that's something that is in the current text, or rather in the current policy.
Okay, could we add that into the PRD also? That it's paving of the streets is encouraged?
Well, it's even, let's see,
And
access to
access off
PRD,
of paved roads?
it says access to PRD developments with gross densities higher than 1 unit per 2.5 acres should be directly from publicly maintained roads.
If it's smaller than 2.5 acres, there's going to be more lots and more dust.
Well, that's what that
Well-
means. Greater than 2.5 acres should be off of publicly maintained roads.
Right, but greater than 2.5 acres would be 2.5 and up. I'm talking about places that are 2.5 and or less than 2.5 acres.
I'm sorry, it says gross density is higher. So what that means, it would be smaller lots. Anyway.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
I see what you're
It's-
saying. Okay.
So
So they would be smaller than 2.5 acres.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm thinking about this 640 acres of state land that's could be traded or not traded, but sold. That, I mean, that could be a huge subdivision back in there.
But again, that would come in under the current zoning for that region, assuming that that region has been preliminarily zoned. So
Yeah,
they
it's
would.
5 acres. 5-acre lots.
And then remember,
Okay.
a PRD is a zoning district, right? So it's a type of zoning district, planned residential zoning. And then the subdivision standards are on top of that. Right? So any rezonings, you know, the policy, the plan is encouraging that they be guided by PRD standards, which you've listed. And then a subdivision in a PRD zone would follow those other standards, including that one that says paving of subdivision streets is encouraged to minimize dust. So it's a double layer there.
Okay, so that it would affect both of them. The
Yeah, exactly.
PRDs and the subdivisions?
Yeah, because, you know, the developer wouldn't go through the trouble to rezone something to PRD if they're not going to have a subdivision or create a subdivision.
Okay, I understand that. I just don't, is that not in effect now? How did that Walnut Canyon Meadows get?
That was not a, yeah, I don't believe that was a rezoning.
Oh.
That
Okay.
was based on current zoning, so it just went through the subdivision process.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing from Melissa is that Bernice, your concern is already addressed under policy LU 3A.
Okay, but what about access if they have to go through other people's streets to get to their new subdivision? What if they had to go through, say, a private road that is not paved for access to the PRD or the subdivision?
Well, every time a subdivision comes in, the subdivision standards, which is a whole different document, are utilized, and a traffic impact either statement or analysis is required. So part of what the county looks at that point is access. And, you know, likely they wouldn't be going through a private road unless that person was maybe the developer. And yeah, that's not really something that would happen without that property owner participating in the process.
Okay, I know Cokefield Road, south off of Townsend, Winona, would lead directly to that 640 acres back in around the
Right.
Turkey Hills there. And that's a private road.
Well, just one comment on that, in that if someone develops something like that, they are going to have legal access. They cannot just use somebody else's easement. And the other thing is, typically we will ask that access meet a minimum county standard in some cases.
Oh, okay.
But that would have to all be agreed on by that property owner.
That is absolutely correct.
Great.
And that
Okay,
is,
thank you.
in some cases, the developer has bought the property, or they've made those arrangements to legally use that easement or existing road for access.
So
Okay, thank you.
what I'm hearing, Bernice, is that under different county policies and procedures that it actually covers your concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to number 7. Bernice asked, please add a policy that preserves some open space on the residential lot so that the entire parcel is not built out.
And I can address that, my comment there, Brian. The zoning code does right now limit what's called coverage. So for instance, in the large residential zones, like the G zone, the 10-acre minimum zone, it's limited to, I believe it's 40% coverage. And then the smaller lots have less coverage, so they're limited to 35% coverage.
So it's the percent of acreage of a plot that determines the amount of coverage that you could have in terms
It's
of
the zoning district. It's the zoning district that does.
Okay, the zoning district. Okay.
Could we put something in the area plan to make sure that doesn't change? I know other municipalities have increased the amount of buildable space on lots to where that it's almost like the whole lot is built up with additional dwelling units and other types of buildings on the lot that covers almost the whole space of the lot. Is there any way we could put this in to make sure that when the zoning code is changed, that stays in there?
Let me go to Jim Clifford, if I may. Jim, can you share with us as to how that process would occur and how the current percent coverage would have to be amended in order for that, for Bernice's concern to actually be a reality?
It would be a complete zoning ordinance change. And that's not going to happen. Because we just did that. We just went through our zoning ordinance.
And the zoning
would
ordinances last for how long? I mean, is it a 10-year time period? Is there a time period on?
No,
There is
they're
no time
amended.
period.
Yeah, they're
It's
amended periodically.
It's an amendment, and this is something that's also in the regional plan would follow the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And it's already stated in there. So it would have to be changed multiple places. And I don't think that would ever happen.
And if I could tag on to that, like Jim just said, the comprehensive plan has numerous goals and policies that point to preserving open space. And remember, the area plans are amendments to the comprehensive plan. So because the zoning ordinance is countywide and the comprehensive plan is countywide, that really is the driver for any changes to the zoning code.
There was a change to the zoning code that allowed the ADUs, the additional dwelling units, to be rented out when they were specified in the area plan as not to be used as rentals. So that
Bernice, that was a state change.
Yeah,
State
I have
statute
to,
change.
I've got to
That's a
comment
state
on that
ordinance.
also. Having been on the Planning and Zoning Commission when we formulated an ordinance for short-term rentals, we were preempted before that ever went into effect by legislation introduced by Debbie Lesko when she was a representative at the state legislature, and that was in 2016. Planning and zoning had nothing to do with that.
Thank you. Let me go to Liz, who has her hand up.
Okay, I just want to know, aren't all these policies changed if you say there's a clear benefit or a public benefit? And if we have housing issues and they want to have more housing out here, couldn't that change and you could do a P&Z change to make the residential lots and not have the open space, like you were saying 40, 60, but if it's a clear benefit or a public benefit, we have in a lot of our policies, can't that make it be a change, whether we have a present planning and zoning that says that's not available? John Riggles, maybe?
I'm not clear on what you're asking, Liz.
Well, everyone's saying, well, you can't do it now because of planning and zoning and all these ordinances you're talking about.
Right.
But in other policies, didn't it say you can take land, you can change land, you can change the planning and zoning if there's a clear public benefit, or that word is that we've done it in a lot of our policies. So if they're saying there's a housing shortage.
That is already addressed in the area plan, but to do anything like that typically is going to require a zone change. And I think both the area plan and the comprehensive plan give us some pretty clear guidance on that.
Okay, even if it's public interest. Okay, I thought we could change anything like public domain and transportation. We're talking about public domain if it's a clear benefit. And I thought it would be for any policy. If there's something, we can always go in there, even in the area plan, and change it if they have a persuasion of a clear benefit. So
well,
okay.
that is where things go, and the way they go and are evaluated when something like a zone change comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission that has to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. And, you know, this is the guidance that is used when evaluating those things. And I think what we have right now is pretty clear on that.
Okay.
And follows a lot of what the community out here wants.
Well, I
Want to
hope
keep
we
it.
stick to that, right? I hope that's what this document's doing. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, John, so you're
Brian,
saying,
if I could just mention, you might want to
Yes.
get back onto this policy.
I do want to. And in fact, what I was wanting to do is to go to the committee and ask if you will vote with green, if you want to continue discussing this, or a red, if you're ready to leave the policy, leave our policy as is and move on to the next topic.
I didn't want to
Excuse me,
continue.
Brian.
I just wanted an answer, and John Reynolds gave me an answer. So thank you, John.
Excuse me, could I say one more thing? About
Well-
this, you know, this is a guide for the planning and zoning and the board of supervisors. And you just said that it's already addressed in our area plan. And could you show me where it is addressed in the area plan already? For the open space on the residential? And commercial and industrial for that matter.
Well,
It's
first of
addressed.
all,
It
go
is-
ahead.
It is addressed in the zoning code.
But that could change, right?
Well, so can the
And
area
we
plan,
write
but
it, we want to keep this, open space for the next 20 years.
Bernice, there are many policies in your plan that address the desire to maintain open space. To specifically get into details about residential lot coverage is already addressed by the zoning ordinance, which has a lot greater weight and authority than the area plan policies do.
But it could change.
It's not going to change unless the comprehensive plan changes. And there's
But you're saying
very,
that it's already addressed in this area plan. Where is it addressed?
What she is saying is it's already addressed in the comprehensive plan. And we
Okay,
have
but
to be
this-
in compliance with the comprehensive plan.
Okay,
So I'm going to call for a vote, please. If we continue with green or move on with red,
Brian, can I interrupt for just a second, please?
certainly.
We have a cell phone 623-308-6433. Would you please mute?
Thank you, Jim. Okay. Looking at the responses from the committee. 1, 2, 3,
I see 2 green and 4 red.
2 green and 4 red. So based upon the committee vote, we will move on to the next topic. The next topic is item number 16. Melissa, you have your blue pointer on it. What if I'll just read it real quickly. Residential collective housing should not be allowed in this plan as it greatly increases density. The community survey spoke clearly against increasing density in our area. The term was substituted for the term group homes, which has a much smaller density. For information and pictures, you can go to a website. The response from the county was to see revised land use policy number 8. I have to collapse this. Assisted living. Jessica, could you read that for me? Because the names of people cover what I'm trying to read.
You want me to read the comment?
Yes, not the comment, the
Oh, the
response from the
yes.
county.
See revised LU 8. Assisted living, convalescent homes, and residential collective homes should maintain the rural residential character of the area by not exceeding 10 residents per home. Extended public notice to nearby property owners for these proposed facilities should be customized based on the location for each proposal.
Okay. So I was not at the last meeting. Jim Clifford, I'm going to ask you to step in here because I'm not sure if group homes and what is it, residential collective housing are the same or are different entities.
They are similar but different. The collective housing, if I remember the definition correctly, is a home where they have one kitchen, one common area, restrooms, and bed spaces for up to 10 residents who are in need of some kind of help. It could be a rehab center, it could be special needs, things like that. And all of this will be covered under a CUP when somebody comes to the county to have a residential collective home, a convalescent home, any kind of assisted living. It all needs to have a CUP, and the county will have to, or the owner would have to come to us for a CUP, and planning and zoning will see that. John?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have got to agree with Bernice on this. I did a considerable amount of research and found that even defining a collective housing or collective home varies tremendously. I could not find a single jurisdiction in this country that adequately defined it or even attempted to define it, and much less having something like the terminology collective housing in their zoning code. I found that the definition of it is all over the map, even in Western Europe, Australia, the UK, and coming up with a definition for it is literally impossible, literally, almost, because of the divergence of the way it is defined or permitted or used throughout the Western world. Now, we do not have a definition for collective homes in the zoning code. So whatever if we were to come up with something here, it would not be considered a definition that gives you the kind of direction, I think, that we would need. So the use of the term, I think we should not have it in there. We can talk about assisted living, convalescent homes, and other residential facilities, but and I know Melissa's got something to say on this because I talked to her earlier this week about this. If you've got a collective home, that could be a boarding house.
Mhm.
I've lived in facilities like this, and I have to agree that it is completely inappropriate to even try to put it in here, much less define it in this.
Don, can I jump in
Sure.
and just clarify something real quick? The zoning ordinance actually does have a definition for residential collective home. Do you see the glossary on the screen now?
Oh,
Yes.
right. I missed
Okay,
that. I
so-
apologize for
So
that.
this is your glossary, and in response to last time's conversation about defining this for Doney Park, we've put this in the glossary. So the first part of this paragraph, this first sentence is straight from the zoning code.
Okay.
The second part of the sentence is customized for Doney Park Timberline Fernwood. So
Well-
this is a way to capture and address some of the comments that we've heard
And
about this, including
I-
Bernice's.
I-
So I just
I-
wanted to give you a chance to read this.
Okay, I apologize for my comment on the zoning code because I don't know how I missed that, but I certainly, residential collective home, that's why. But anyway, I think for something like this, even 10 residents may be a bit much.
Mhm.
That is consistent with what's allowed in group homes, I'll point out.
Yes, it may be consistent with group homes, but that is defined for us, I believe, by state statute and also federal statute in terms of the number of people. But
Yeah, and actually I will point out that the 10 persons per residence was what the group agreed on last time.
well, I've got to agree with Bernice. It may be a bit too much.
Can we change it back to group homes?
Well, if.
The term
the-
residential
if-
collective home is used in the zoning ordinance, so we can't just change that. Group home for
And-
disabled is the only
Yeah.
reference to group home in the zoning ordinance, and that's a very specific definition.
Our
And it's defined within the context of how it's used. in the
Okay,
gloss.
but our current plan has group homes and they are more regulated and they are for people needing help, like foster kids or disabled veterans and residential collective homes, like John said, could be more of a boarding type home for anybody. It says here, other than a family. So these are people that are not related, 10 people that aren't related, and these are able to be put in 90% of our area in all of the residential areas.
Remember, with a
Right.
conditional use permit,
Permit.
Right. But
very
that-
specific public hearing process.
that's a lot of people in our rural area. We're making and the residential collective housing that's around NAU, take a look at it. We don't need that with our fire insurance, or not fire insurance, our fire issues out here, our water issues out here, our infrastructure issues out here, the problems with the law enforcement not being able to cover the whole area. We don't need more density out here, and this would greatly increase the density.
Okay, I understand your argument about density, but I think, again, we've got to come back to it requires a commercial, conditional use permit. And my understanding from John Ruggles and Jim Clifford is those are not easy to obtain. You've got to do quite a bit of substantial presentation, detailed information to get one.
Well, they sure put them around NAU and around Flagstaff and
That's irrelevant. We're talking
That's
about.
We're
county.
talking about Doney Park, not the city of Flagstaff.
Yeah.
right, that's why we don't
If-
need them in Doney Park.
No, if the city of Flagstaff wants to annex us, then we're going to follow city of Flagstaff policy.
Yep.
We have to.
I'm
We
talking
are
about
talking,
changing
we are
this back
talking
to
about the
group home.
Doney Park Timberline Fernwood area, which is a county policy.
Mhm.
That's correct.
I would
Yeah.
just like to have a vote on how changing it back to group homes.
Well, before we do that, Melissa, is there a definition for group home?
Yes.
In our
Definition for group home in the zoning ordinance is specifically group home for the disabled, and that's the only time group home is referenced. The other references are to assisted living, convalescent home, and residential collective homes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm taking a deep breath and saying the serenity prayer again.
Good for you.
I think Evelyn's got her hand up.
Evelyn, please share with us.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's possible if it would help the situation if we were to put in the plan so it would not grow anymore in these particular kinds of homes, a certain percentage, say not to exceed such and such percent of something area.
That would be very hard to define, Evelyn,
Oh,
and then
geez.
you're starting to really get into private property rights, and that's a slippery slope.
Okay, so it's not possible to try to limit the amount of these homes that could go into the area into the area.
Well,
I would not recommend that without pulling off and doing some sort of study and analysis. And I don't even know what that would look like at that point.
Okay.
Oh, I can give you a little bit of an insight into that.
Quickly,
that
please,
one of the
John.
things, one of the things that you do to limit this is to encourage spacing or put spacing in the code. This is something that, well, when I was down there in Phoenix, we got done with bars. They had to be 1,320 feet, quarter mile apart.
And that actually already is in the zoning code
For group homes, right?
for group homes. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So encouraging that would be something that could be added to the area plan as a means of discouraging the proliferation of collective housing. Should be spaced in a manner commensurate with that for group homes, or just use the wording that is in the ordinance for group home spacing.
So what you're advocating, John, is that there be a distance requirement between where these different residential collective homes exist.
I think in the area plan is the appropriate place to put it, for the simple reason that the Planning and Zoning Commission can look at this and say, well, we have a circumstance where it would be appropriate to have them located closer. I would not want to see that come across to us, but nevertheless, it gives you the ability to look at it. And it also tells the Planning and Zoning Commission, look, there can be a problem with these things.
Let me go back to Melissa and ask, I mean, is that even a reasonable process for us to get involved in? Because I'm not sure how the heck we would define what a reasonable distance between these residential collective homes would be.
Well,
You
as
already
John
have-
mentioned, there is a distance already in the zoning ordinance in regard to group homes for the disabled. I'm looking that up right now. I
think-
suggest that we go ahead and possibly put this discussion, table it for now and come back to it and try to move through the rest of the policies while I look this
Yeah.
up. Does that sound good?
It sounds good to me. So
Yep,
let me,
That'll
I'm
work.
afraid with this going to the Board of Supervisors the end of next month, we won't have time to come back to
Oh,
it.
and if I could just clarify, this
That
would
works.
not be scheduled for Board of Supervisors until September. So we'll need to clarify some of the scheduling date, but it's
Right.
scheduled for just a work session.
Melissa, oh, I'm sorry, you got it. The work session. I was just going to ask you about that.
I still would like to
let's-
have a vote on whether to just take this and put it back to group homes, since they are more within the character of our community, and they don't have the density that the potential of the residential collective housing. would-
Bernice, I need to
I-
just jump in though, because group home in the zoning ordinance, the only type of land use that's a group home is a group home for the disabled. So
Yeah.
changing it to group home wouldn't,
Yeah.
it would not match the zoning code, so it wouldn't mean anything. Do you know what I mean? There's not a land use called just group home in the zoning ordinance that would guide where this policy would apply. So you need to make sure that your conditional use permitting process aligns with what's in the zoning code in terms of terminology, so there's no mix up.
And
Well,
that
Otherwise,
is,
There
That's
won't be
for-
anything to apply to that.
that's precisely the reason I suggested putting a distance such as we have in the zoning code should be considered when evaluating something like this for a conditional use permit.
And I'll read you right now,
Okay.
the performance standard for group home for the disabled. And again, that's a very specific type of population that is identified under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So the minimum separation between group homes for this disabled shall be 1,200 feet in accordance with ARS 36-582. So that's a state statute that policy, or rather that standard follows. Okay, and I don't know the background as to why the state determined that 1,200 foot distance for group home for the disabled. So there's research that went into that particular distance requirement.
So at this point, I'm going to
And I'd be
call,
happy to show you how that reads. I'll show you that right now.
okay,
Okay, so do you see that on the screen? Performance standards, where it says group home for the disabled, number 1, separation.
Yes, we see it.
Yes.
Okay,
I still don't think the group homes would proliferate like these residential collective homes have the potential to.
Bernice, if you
But-
change the phrase residential collective home and just call it a group home, if you have a residential collective home land use that is being applied for in Doney Park Timberline Fernwood, you won't have a policy then that addresses it because you won't have a matching land use phrase or land use title.
Well, we did have a phrase in there to say that no multi-unit housing is allowed in the area. Why can't we do that with residential collective housing since it's multi-unit?
It's one unit, it's one residence.
It's one residence, but it's like an apartment building. With
It's
10
one residence with one kitchen and common living areas, a common living area.
the other thing is that it does not accommodate the diversity that we're seeking within our community. And we have said that we are open to having people with different perspectives, different ethnicities, different life processes. So at this point, I want to go back to Melissa, and Melissa, I'm going to ask for your advice here. I get the feeling that this is a topic that we need to look at a bit more, and I prefer to table it. Do you think that's an appropriate thing to do now so we can move on to?
Well, I was suggesting tabling it so I could pull up that language out of the zoning ordinance, and you all have just looked at that. I don't know what more we could do to delay a decision at this point.
Could
You
we
know,
make-
again, going back to
Well-
the proposed definition that's in your glossary, here it is on the screen again.
Right.
And if you read the last part of the last sentence in Doney Park Timberline Fernwood, the number of residents are limited to 10 per home in a single family residential style facility.
Okay. So let me go back to Bernice's original proposed statement. Those people who want to continue to discuss and determine if we need to make some change, please use the green button. Those of you who feel that the way it is written currently is adequate, please use the red button, those committee members. And please score your positions now.
We've got 3 and 3 at the moment.
Okay,
Oh, we
Yep.
have four red X's and 3 green checks.
okay. John Ruggles, I'm gonna call on you no, did you? Yeah, you did green. What specifically do you recommend be changed?
Nothing more than the addition of a recommended spacing to be considered.
Okay. Bernice, I see that your hand is up. I want to go to whomever the second person was. Who is the second person that said green?
Liz.
Liz, what is it specifically? Articulate exactly what it is you would like to see in the comment there that Bernice has proposed.
I agree with John. I think distancing will be good to number how many we can actually have, and to get it in our glossary, because we have no definition of that in our glossary, because I have the glossary in front of us.
Well, we
Except
have
for
the,
planning and zoning,
glossary,
of planning and zoning, right.
yeah, the
ours.
residential what is it? The residential collective housing. is
What I showed you was your glossary.
When did we add that? Because I have a glossary in my hand right now.
It was after the last meeting. You don't, it was from May 12th.
Okay, so we did have the glossary in there. So I guess we have to change, well, no, because we can just have the definition and then add the distancing.
Right. Okay, so 2 for distancing. Evelyn, I see your hand up, but I'm going to go to Bernice first and ask Bernice, articulate the one thing that you want to see in here that you think is essential.
I would like to see them limited in number. And I'd like to see the term changed back to group homes,
Okay,
as we have in our area plan right now. I
thank
don't
you.
want to see what is at NAU in Doney Park.
Okay,
But it can't be, Bernice.
Yes, it
It
can.
can't be.
Kitchen.
it's, okay, I'm going to go to Evelyn. Evelyn, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just was thinking, I thought the vote was to continue on with Melissa checking in on things. So maybe I didn't vote right, because I thought we were moving on to the next one with the consideration that we were going to come back to this.
That is what I had intended.
Okay,
And what has happened here is that we're evenly split, or very, very evenly split. Given that we've done this much work on it, rather than come back to it and reiterate the arguments again, I'm trying to see if we can come to a conclusion with this so that we're not spinning our wheels.
okay, so then I didn't vote correctly. I would still like to see, like the others are saying, that we find a way to limit the homes that would be out here that are under this. I don't know what to call it.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
I would like to see a change to what we were talking about. And I thought that's what we were voting on, moving on and coming back to it. But if we're not going to come back to it, yes, I would like to see something where it does limit it.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn. So the most common comment that I've heard is to limit the number of these residential collective housing units by their spacing. And so my recommendation would be that we incorporate the terminology that Melissa had just defined for us in some document. Melissa, your hand is up.
Yes, and I will need to check with legal staff. I don't know if that's something that we can actually do for these types of facilities.
Oh. That's a very important comment, because if we can't do it, then we can't do it.
It's only a
The
recommendation.
group home for the disabled distance is set by state statute, and I don't know if there are any kind of prohibitions on limiting including a distance requirement for this type of facility.
Well, here's something to consider. That may, a distance, utilizing that may run afoul of legislation that has eliminated or preempted municipalities and counties from doing regulation of short-term rentals.
Okay. Jim Clifford, you have your hand up.
I think we should table this for now till Melissa can talk to legal. And then they can come up with what we can put in here. If we can do a distance, if the way it is written now, if legal says this is the best way it can be, and she can get that back to us in an email, and we'll just have to look at it prior to it going back to the prior to it going to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right.
Okay,
Next month.
I agree with you, Jim.
Would it be possible to limit them to the RACs, the rural activity?
It's going to be what legal says. Legal is going to mandate this. We have to
Yes.
follow state statutes and legal has to mandate this.
I agree with Jim Clifford.
I think if
So,
we can limit multi-unit housing, we could limit this also.
but we still have to be in compliance with the legal aspect of it. So let's get that cleared up. And then if necessary, we can come back to it. But let's get our legal cards in a row first.
I would like to bring up that all the comments that we've gotten from the residents out here have been against residential collective housing, as well as people that answered the survey.
Well, okay.
Increased density.
So one thing I'd like you to do then, Bernice, is to go back and quantify the number of comments in comparison to the number of responses, because not everybody's going to comment on everything. So it gives us some measure of how vibrant this issue is amongst people here in Doney Park. Okay, I'm going to go to Liz Baldwin, and then I'm going to go to Evelyn.
Yeah, I already counted collective housing. You mean in this last open house or all together? Because on this last open house, there were 4 that was definitely collective housing and 1 that you could take either way. They just said not multi-unit houses, so they could have meant duplexes. But it was actually on this last, it was 4. So we had how many comments? But I mean, it was 4 that actually brought the word up in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
Uh-huh.
I think also
Evelyn,
the people that don't want to increase
Bernice,
density.
Bernice, please wait. Evelyn, you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the people that are commenting on this are knowledgeable as to what these residential homes really are. They aren't multi-floored buildings. They aren't huge buildings. They are one residential home with 10 people. Okay, so I'm wondering if when people see a residential collective housing, they are like thinking like Bernice, that they are these, 7-story huge complexes with businesses underneath. And that's not at all. So I'm just wondering if some of these people are really knowledgeable as to what exactly these residential collective housing really is. And that's because a lot of times I hear people say something and they aren't really totally knowledgeable about what the thing is. So I kind of tend to wonder, what are these people really thinking when they are making a comment about this?
That's a good question, Evelyn. Thank you for bringing it up. I think we need to think about that. I don't have a response for you.
Could we look at that website I put in the comment, because it shows pictures of them?
Okay.
It's shocking.
Well, I think we need to get the definition, the decision from legal. We need to get their advice first. And once we get their advice, then I think we come back and do that. Because we've got a lot more work we need to get done tonight. This is an important topic. I don't want to minimize it, but I think we need to get legal's opinion first. Okay, to be consistent, those who feel that we should continue this conversation and go to her Bernice's website, etc., use the green. Those who favor tabling this conversation, use red. Please vote.
We've got 5 red and 1 green.
Thank you. So Bernice, we will be coming back to this, but let's get our legal information so that we don't put the cart before the horse. Where are we?
Okay, Brian.
We are on line 9.
Okay, Jim Clifford, you had something to share?
1331, which is the next one, which is our next line that we're looking at, is part of the one that we were just talking about. So we can move over that one
I agree.
and then go to the next one.
So,
The additional dwelling units.
yes, because legal will address both. Melissa, please ask legal to address both issues that Bernice brings up here. So the next one, additional dwelling units, ADUs, they're oftentimes referred to as accessory dwelling units, should be limited to 1 per property. The 2001 area plan limited them to family-only residences that are not available for rent. However, planning and zoning changed that, allowing them to be used as rentals, parentheses, and some are now being used as VRBOs, close parentheses. This should be addressed in this plan so that we can help limit density as preferred by area residents. Okay, that was Bernice's comment. The county staff said, C suggested policy LU9, that's a new policy, to maintain the valued rural residential community character of the area, and the community supports owner occupied and discourages use of housing as rental property. I'm not reading the whole thing because it's partly covered. Melissa, let me go to you, please.
Right. I just wanted to follow up on what John Ruggles pointed out earlier, in that the state preempted the county's ability to regulate short-term rentals. We did have the ordinance in place, and once the state adopted that rule, we had to remove it because we were not in compliance with state policies that preempted our ability. So we cannot put that in the zoning code. However, that's why we suggested this new policy for your area plan, which I think is about as far as we can take it.
Okay. Bernice, your hand is up.
Thank you. That policy is great, but it doesn't limit the number of ADUs in the future that could be built on the lots. So people, if the planning and zoning decided to change the ordinance and allow more units like they do in the city of Flagstaff, that, if we put this in the area plan, it would protect against the proliferation of more additional dwelling units. Also, we can't regulate short-term rentals because of what the state legislature has passed. I understand that, but if we do not allow them to be rentals at all, like it was like it is in our area plan right now, if we could go back to that and just grandfather the ones in that are already existing, that
We don't
would
regulate rental properties, Bernice. We don't have any control over that.
That's
Okay,
true.
but if we say the ADUs cannot be used as rentals, that would make them just residences for family.
But that they're permitted by right with the building permit. We don't regulate that.
They're permitted by right to be rentals?
They're
Is that-
permitted by right to be constructed, and then the county is not in the business of managing rental property
Right, but if
or
we keep them
overseeing
as
whether or not they're
non-rentals,
rented.
if we kept them as non-rentals, like is in the area plan now.
How would we do that?
Well, the area plan that's in existence now, we would just use that policy.
But there's no policy to apply to a building permit.
We could, that doesn't apply to the AD. I'm getting confused.
It does apply to an ADU. No matter what residential zone, if there's room on the property with the coverage limitations and the setback requirements, any residential property may build one accessory dwelling unit or guest
Right,
house.
and that's not in our area plan now. So going forward in the future, we want to keep it at 1. So let's put it in the plan that they're only allowed 1.
Thank you, Bernice. Let's
We
go to
could add it
John.
right here then to this potential new policy, because this has, is what we're talking about now. To maintain the valued rural residential community character of the area plan, the community supports owner occupied housing, 1 ADU per parcel, and discourages the use of housing as a vacation rental property.
Thank you.
How does that, you're gonna need to ask the committee, Brian, how that
Yes,
works.
yes. And as you were typing, I didn't quite hear everything you were doing. So would you please reread it?
Okay, I can reread it. So it would read, to maintain the valued rural residential community character of the area plan, the community supports owner occupied housing, comma, 1 ADU per parcel, comma, and discourages the use of housing as vacation rental property. And we need to spell out ADU.
Okay. John Ruggles, I see your hand is up. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I completely agree with the wording that Melissa has chosen. And until state law changes, that's only a recommendation, and it does not trump what is in the current zoning code.
So you're saying that it is still in compliance with zoning code?
Yes, the way it's worded, yeah, no problem
Okay.
with that.
Okay, because that was one of my questions for you and Jim Clifford. Jim Clifford, do you have any comment on the way it's written?
No, I agree with the way it's written now. We
Thank you.
can't maintain the vacation rental aspect of it. That's state mandated. And we have to change legislation in order to tell someone they cannot use a house for a vacation rental, an ADU or any home. We would have to change state legislation, and you would have to have the legislatures do that. We
Right.
can't do it at the county level.
Understood. Okay.
I have a concern before we end this, that it says the community supports owner occupied housing, 1 accessory dwelling unit per parcel. Does the community really support that in our survey? That increases density. Or is there another way we can say it without saying this is what the community wants? Because I don't believe that our survey really supports, putting additional dwelling units on all the properties.
Well, Bernice, the intent of that phrase, owner occupied housing, is to point to just that you prefer housing be owner occupied versus vacation rental.
Exactly.
Okay, but does the community support the ADUs? Do we know that? Is there another way we can phrase this without saying the community supports the ADUs? Because I don't believe that everybody wants them.
Well, I'm not sure that, I'm not reading this the way you are. I am reading this that the community character of the area plan in the supports owner occupied housing,
Okay,
comma.
yeah.
If we
That
add
there be
no
no-
more than 1 accessory dwelling unit per parcel, would that address your concern?
It would make it better, sure. Good idea.
I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
And then the community discourages the use of property as vacation rental.
Brian, Liz has been patiently holding her hand up, and I think her arm's getting tired.
So Liz, you can put your arm down now and please share with us. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. So now I'm confused. We're putting this in ADUs, 1 per family, family dwelling, family member, but I thought the state regulated this, or I don't understand. So now I'm putting this in, but does it matter? I mean, I agree with you, Bernice, but I'm just saying, I thought we just said it was a state, that they took care of it because it was in the jurisdiction of county, but then it changed. So how are we wasting this time? Not wasting, because it is good. It's good information to discuss, but these ADUs, we're putting it in our plan because you're saying in case the state mandate goes back to county, then we have this, Bernice? I'm just trying to understand this. Because didn't Melissa say, and we were talking about
Yes.
this months ago, about the state regulates this. We
So,
used to regulate. it. We took it
Regulates the
over.
VRBO, not the
hold on.
AD.
Let me go to Jim Clifford, because Jim, I think you can probably explain this better than I.
An accessory dwelling unit can be okay, let me go to the first part of our phrase here. An owner occupied housing unit is your home that you live in on your property. One accessory dwelling unit up to, I believe it's 1,200 square feet, can be built on your property for the use of a family member. You can use it as a vacation rental unit. You can use it as whatever you want. That's part of the zoning ordinance. And that is mandated by the state of Arizona.
Right.
We can't do anything about that. The way it is written right here, we are asking people to discouraging people from
Right.
renting them, but we cannot go against the state of Arizona
Right.
when we can't limit what the person does on their home. So yes, only one unit is allowed by zoning ordinance.
And this keeps it at 1 unit.
The zoning ordinance keeps it at one
Yeah.
unit.
And this area plan will guide future zoning for the next 20 years.
But this isn't just planning and zoning. This is state, Bernice, right?
If the
It's
state says that
mandate.
if the state says that you can have two, then the county has to
Right.
let people have two. But with if you cannot get by,
Jim, you just silenced yourself.
oops, sorry, cat walked over my keyboard. It's like, oh, if the state says that you can have as many accessory dwelling units as you want on your property,
Right.
the county can't has to follow what the state says. But because we are on septic systems out here, if we cannot put in a large enough septic system to handle an ADU, even right now on a property, if you do not have enough capacity, you're not going to get the change to put in that ADU.
Jim, I agree with you, and
Yeah.
thank you for your explanation. I do now want to get back to whether or not we accept the policy as Melissa has written it. Now, this is a slight change. If you want to adopt the policy that Melissa has written, use the green button. If you want to reject the policy as Melissa has written it, use the red button. Does that make sense to everyone?
We've got 6 screens.
Well, you're going to have 7. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, I think we're at the end of the comments, so we go to the vision statements.
That's right.
Okay. Jim, I'm going to ask you to do this because I missed this part for some reason. I did not read these. So I want to turn the gavel, if you will, over to Jim Clifford.
And I do want to just make a point that these were actually comments from the first open house that the committee had not gotten to yet. Okay,
Oh. Okay.
These were from quite a while ago.
Jim, I did not read these before this meeting. I missed it.
That's
If you
fine.
have, please go ahead and take the gavel.
Yeah, I've read through them all, and
so these were marked
Sorry.
all to the committee for review.
okay, so the first one, note, no change recommended, addressed in the transportation chapter.
Would you like me to read the comment, Jim?
Please.
The comment on the vision statement category, land use, growth, development, and partnerships. The comment was, consider impact to existing infrastructure. As community grows, major corridors have not been upgraded to support the community growth. Highway 89 is in desperate need of more turn lanes to support the traffic. Clear signage should be placed on towns of Winona and Highway 89 to prevent highway traffic diversion into neighborhoods. Cokefield and Silver Saddle were not designed for high volume highway traffic. Remember, these were comments on your vision statement, which are your broad overarching goals for the future. And then the details are in the goals and policies. So if you review the transportation and circulation chapter, these issues have been discussed there.
And how did that read in the in that vision statement that we agreed on?
Okay. Hold on, I will bring it up.
I thought I had it here and I don't have it on my computer.
I can read it or I can display it. Which would you prefer?
Just read it. Just read it, please.
Okay, give me 1 second. And if you have the plan in front of you, it's on page 14. And the vision statement for transportation reads, the transportation system in Doney Park Timberline Fernwood integrates and connects multimodal facilities for transit, pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian users throughout and beyond the planning area. Our future envisions transportation corridors that are safe and accessible for wildlife, motorists, and all non-motorized users. Enhanced opportunities for transit and commuter options are possible at key locations throughout the planning area. So again, this was a comment that was attached to the vision statement from the open house number 1.
And we have pretty much already covered this.
Yeah.
Many of these points in this comment category are addressed in your transportation circulation
In
goals
that
and policies.
circulation. I think I don't think we have to make any changes then.
Jim, do we want to take a vote by the committee as
Yep.
to whether?
Yep. Let's take a vote. Green, if you would like to keep it as Melissa read it. And red, if you would like to make any changes. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 green. I don't see any red. Seven green. One keeps flashing in and out. So we keep it as written. Okay, we can go to the next one.
Excuse me, I'd like to point out that we received these comments earlier, and then afterwards, for the people that are on here, we made some policies that ADOT or that the county communicate with ADOT to keep some of the non-local traffic off the neighborhood streets.
That's going to be addressed later.
Right, and
Well,
we've done that. So, and this was submitted earlier, right?
This was back
This-
from the first open house.
This was from the
So
first
we talked
open
about
house.
the post that open house.
And we do have some updates for you on that.
Yeah.
We have updates on Townsend Winona Road that we'll get to after we get through this.
Okay, and we need to add Silver Saddle and Coke Field too, because there's a lot of truck
That
traffic.
will-
Yeah,
that-
we have updates for you on
That
that.
will all be addressed after we get through all of this. We'll address roads after we get through this.
Thanks a lot.
Do you want me to read the next one,
Please.
Jim?
Please.
Okay. So the next comment was tagged to the transportation vision that I just read. This might be the only place in the entire draft where the word commuter appears. I think we would be well advised to think long-term. The current reality is that many area residents commute to jobs and education in Flagstaff, and the area does not exist in a vacuum. And in the longer term, the pressures for affordable housing and for desirable second homes for those seeking refuge from Phoenix heat, like the current pressure in Flagstaff itself, will be knocking on the door of this area. Does this plan look sufficiently far ahead to deal constructively with those pressures? I don't think we should just pretend that we can keep our rural lifestyle with large lots and internal only transportation routes by ignoring those outside pressures. And then we had made a suggested revision to your land use growth development and partnerships vision to add this red text here as part of the greater Flagstaff region. And this was done from last time. Sorry, we're having a few technical issues.
It's okay. The way this is written here with the change in red, is that the way the new vision statement would read?
Yeah, so the current vision statement is everything that's in black, and then the new part would be as part of the greater Flagstaff region. And I can read that for people that
I
are.
think we have one person on the phone, I believe. So.
Okay, I can read it then. So the updated vision statement would read, our area plan, comma, as part of the greater Flagstaff region supports responsible land use and planned growth that maintains our rural lifestyle and character. We embrace a future that accommodates residents while ensuring that new and additional development is integrated into our community in a manner that respects cultural and historic resources, supports community values and aesthetics, and considers the environment and long-term viability of natural habitat and water resources.
Liz, you have your hand up?
Yeah, and I was going to add that this really doesn't even belong in vision, but we have this that changes it, but it says transportation. But the little paragraph she just read, that was vision, but we actually have it documented. Everything this person commented on is in the policy and procedure from TC 12 to 15 and TC 18. So it is covered in the policy and procedure, and you're just putting this paragraph in, but it's not going to go in transportation. It's going in land use.
No, it's
Where's
under
this paragraph going to? What vision statement?
This is your land, this would be your land use
use.
vision statement.
Okay.
That's right. Mhm.
Okay, all right. That's what I want to know, because over here it says transportation. I'm like,
Right,
has
and
to-
that's because it was for, that comment was attached to the transportation
Okay.
vision from that open house. Yeah,
okay, now I understand it, because I was like, okay, got it.
sorry, it is confusing, but just to make.
Because we
Make it-
definitely addressed all that in the policies in there, but okay.
So did you want to talk about modifying that vision statement?
Jim, I recommend that we go ahead and call for a vote, and depending upon the outcome of the vote, then we could consider discussion.
Correct, because Liz was the only one that raised her hand and she wanted clarification.
Right.
No one else raised her hand, so that's why I asked for the vote.
Okay. Oh, you did ask for a vote. Excuse me.
Yes,
I was asleep at the wheel.
that's okay. You just got off the river. We understand.
I'll be asleep at the oars.
Been there, done that. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, 6 yes. So 7 yes. All right, so that one will keep as written with the addition. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we can go to the next one.
Okay, oops, sorry. The next one is on line 5, and the comment again was related to the transportation vision. Please limit off-road parking on feeder roads of the plan. And my comment was that no change was recommended. It was unclear what this was referring to. Liz might have something to add to that.
Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you. Well, again, we need a text clarification, and it's really not in our vision statement to address these specific issues, but I did look up feeder roads, and I think the clarification is feeder is meaning collector, and whether it was a major collector or minor collector, the information I could screen off from the Forest Service, Public Works, and an old transportation manager was, it's very, very specific what road you're talking about, because if it's private with private easement, they cannot without permission. If it's a county maintained road, well, I guess we don't even have to go into detail, but there are certain specifications of what road you're talking about. So if it's county maintained, yes, you can. Does it have to have a shoulder? No, it does not. You can just park there. And should we have the signage on it? No, because county said, well, according to what I heard today, no, they're not going to put signs. You can park here. Forest Service said it depends on the road. Is it a designated trail or is it a social trail? And so the question is, yes, you can, but depends on the situation and what roads you're specifically talking about. But again, this is the vision, but it's something I guess we should address. So I looked into it.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Liz, you're the best versed on this, so thank you for that.
Of course, you're welcome.
I don't see any other hands going up. So let's take a vote. Those who would like to keep it as written, say yes. Those opposed, say no. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See 6 yes. 6 yes, so that will keep as written. Go to the next one, please.
All right, and the next one is actually a comment from Russell Weedman, and there were, I'll just read this, and they were tagged to specific, there were specific policy numbers added to the comment, and then it was tagged to the vision statement. The County Board of Supervisors should also communicate with the Arizona Department of Transportation on any future plans for the construction of a Highway 89 bypass. A Highway 89 bypass would improve unsafe traffic conditions, provide safer crossings of Highway 89, and a safer journey to school for area students. And my comment was, if you recall, we did hear an update from Metro Plan about this. The bypass option was actually not, it was considered at one time. It is not being considered now in terms of funding. It was not a popular option for a number of reasons. So there was no change recommended based on this comment to your vision statement.
Okay. Any questions, comments? I see no hands, so green is a yes, red is a no. We'll keep it as green, we'll keep it as stated. Red, we go for change. Evelyn, I see your hand went up.
Yeah, I just was wondering, since we're looking at 20 years down the road, would it hurt any to add a suggestion such as this, so that if it comes up again, it would be in the area plan? If the metro plan were to consider it, or, you know, if it were to be looked at again, then our feelings on this would kind of be considered.
Well, those plans, the metro, they're updated every 5 years. Actually, they're updated more often than the area plans. And remember, this comment was attached to your vision statement. So I guess two things there. You know, we've read your transportation vision statement, but then really the most effective way to be engaged is to participate in those every 5-year updates on the regional transportation plan itself, which is actually going on right now, in case you forgot. But so that's would be, you know, the appropriate place to really get into details about that type of bypass.
So then, like, making a policy that just kind of suggests this for down the road, could that be a good idea?
I can't
If,
raise my hand, but can I say something to that, Evelyn or Melissa?
yes, go ahead.
With this, like we did on projects that we haven't discussed, we're putting in an appendix or in the text of what a group of people from Public Works was, or I don't know what their position is now, but at one time they did transportation. They made a whole list for Melissa and I to review. And this could maybe go in with that, about possible projects in the future, just in case we have the funding and we have more of the interest to do that. Would that be appropriate, Melissa, to put it there?
Well, you know, this was one comment on a bypass, and from my understanding, and I wasn't part of that planning process, but the 89 bypass was not favored by a lot of
Okay.
people. So I don't know that there's a lot of information, you know, about
Okay.
community sentiment on this.
Yeah, I don't know what the past survey was. I know I heard about it, but I don't know how far they investigated in it. But
And it
okay.
really didn't come up in our survey. It wasn't anything that was discussed publicly. A
But you know what,
bypass is a
those
big
things-
deal.
But the Melissa, the things that Dave and Nick suggested that we couldn't even understand, and we made up maps, we didn't vote on that. We didn't have public hearing on that. We didn't have a discussion with the public. They were just made those suggestions. So if this
Those
is a
are safety
suggestion,
suggestions too, though, that wouldn't require something like a bypass road. That
oh, you mean it's too large, like what some of the things about putting safety or increasing easements or making make the road longer, I mean, wider, and having sidewalks, that wouldn't be such a big deal. The bypass, we can make that as a suggestion.
Yeah,
but this
a
is such
bypass
large
is a
project. Okay.
it's a
I
substantial.
was just saying. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Brian, it looks like you've got some green checks. You might want to confirm what they're standing for.
Okay, so I think Jim was saying that we would keep, Jim, is this accurate? That we would keep it written as current with green?
Yep.
And that we would continue to debate and perhaps edit with red.
Yes,
So where are we?
I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 green.
So we keep it as written.
Yes. Okay, and water resource chapter.
If folks would remove their markings as to whether they were for or against something, please. Okay, Jim, I'm going to let you handle this again because this is a comment that I offered.
Okay. County should work with the city of Flagstaff. This is a Brian Bates suggested addition to the water resources chapter. The goal, the county should work with the city of Flagstaff to mitigate and eliminate any potential aquifer contamination from wastewater, stormwater, and other source discharge. This is pertinent because A, the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood communities are downstream of the wastewater discharge. B, a Doney Park Water Company well close to the Rio de Flag has been shut down due to high nitrogen content, likely coming from the Wildcat wastewater treatment plant. And C, the Doney Park communities get their water from the aquifer, which could be contaminated by wastewater discharge. And policies, if you could move that a little bit, please. The county should encourage the city to install advanced wastewater treatment that can eliminate synthetic organics and other toxins in the wastewater stream prior to discharge. The city should contract with or build, upgrade their own analytical labs to determine the levels of and associated health risks of any residential toxins. The county should work with the city to source funding for such a project and then apply lessons learned to other communities. The county should work, and this is B, the county should work in concert with the city, the USGS, state and federal DEQ, and other science-based institutions, including NAU, to obtain the best available information on where potential contamination originates, how source mitigation can best be achieved, and to define the best path forward for preserving the water quality for Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood, and other regional communities. So Brian, you wanted this added?
I wanted it added, one as a goal, and then A and B would be the policies. Now, this is a bit wordy as I reread it. Amen, because I want to make sure that your grandkids can have children.
Brian,
So-
this is Melissa. If I could just ask a couple questions. It's
Sure.
quite technical. And, you know, the question back to you would be, what department of the county would actually do this? Because the county is not a water provider, and we do not have a department that oversees water quality. That's up to ADEQ. So I'm not sure how this would work for the county to actually do this when it's not something the county has authority or jurisdiction over.
It would fall under the health, the county health department.
But they don't have, they are focused on other programs. They don't monitor waters. Again, that goes back to ADEQ or Doney Park Water as they report to ADEQ.
Doesn't the county health department issue, or the environmental health issue wastewater permits?
They do, yeah, they do issue wastewater permits. That's for individual septic systems or wastewater systems.
Wouldn't
That's
that-
correct.
Yes. Could we say work with ADEQ and the county environmental health?
Environmental health does not have the authority to take on this type of research.
They don't? I did not know that.
No, they have delegated authority from ADEQ to issue wastewater permits, but they are not working to monitor this other type of technical policy
Oh, okay. I
push
see.
that you're suggesting here.
Yeah.
Could we say ADEQ?
Well, they do that already.
Oh. Huh. Could we use
You know,
the
and
word
this is something I
suggest?
have not communicated with the city of Flagstaff on this, but this would be something that we would want to make sure that you know, they're aware of, because this is something, and you know, this is certainly something that I think the Board of Supervisors would be very you know, have something to say, because this is really outside of the purview of the county. Now, our comprehensive plan does have some information in it about water use and things like that, but we have not gotten into this level of detail in those policies. It's very technical.
It
You know,
is
it may be
technical.
more appropriate to communicate with the Colorado Plateau Water Advisory Committee on this type of suggestion.
Yes, and that's already been done and will continue to be done. With the committee's approval, I'd like to take this, and given the information you've provided me, I will re-edit. I'm going to rethink it and potentially resubmit.
And Brian, just we'll need to talk about the schedule then in terms of when that might be reviewed. But
Yeah, I would need to do it very soon.
I have a question, Brian.
Yeah.
Where it says, I really like this, by the way. I really think it's really important. And having worked for the Doney Park Water Company before, and also having worked for ADEQ before, I think it's really, really important, because ADEQ used to have an office up here with, oh my gosh, we had 25 people working at the office, and lots of inspectors and things like that that covered 5 counties. Now we don't. And even at that point, there was not enough staff to cover all the wastewater licenses that they had going. And I think this is tremendously important. And but where it says potential aquifer contamination from wastewater, stormwater, and or other source discharge, would that other source discharge include the problems that we've had with the tunnel fire, where the fire hydrants caused some backflow and contamination into the system that had to be chlorinated? Would that be included in here, or is there something, you know, because that's something that's really important too, to be able to use our fire hydrants and make sure that they don't contaminate the water system.
Right, and yes, there is an issue with backflow. And that's why all of our homes have backflow prevention devices on it. That
Right.
was it. The wastewater, stormwater is pretty clear. The other source or other source discharge was meant to be a blanket statement, because you may be getting this from the Rio de Flag. You could be getting it from any number of discharges from industrial complexes that are in the city of Flagstaff, or even here in Doney Park. And the point was to make it broad enough that it would cover, you know, like Purina plant. I know it's no longer Purina, but the hospital or other sources.
And Brian, I just wanted to remind everybody that, you know, your area plan policies are mainly used and applied to rezoning, subdivisions, and conditional use permits. So
Right.
you know, a technical detailed policy like this may just not have traction in any of those cases.
Yeah, no, I get your point, Melissa. Keep in mind, I wrote this, I don't know when I wrote this. Let me let me revisit this and see what parts may be salient to the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood community. Was that acceptable with the community and the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Liz, did you have a comment? I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with Bernice and Brian. It's so important. And Melissa, sorry, but even though maybe it's beyond our jurisdiction, I think we should mention it in our documents. I mean, did you say we shouldn't even, it's not gonna have any credence because it's out of our realm, Melissa?
It's out of the county's realm. County can't
Yeah.
mandate the water.
So,
Yeah, and
so is she proposing not even to put this in, even though if he rewords it?
No, I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it, Liz,
Okay,
but I've got it. There are some factors that I did not think of that have come to light in this conversation.
okay. So
So
we're
we're
gonna vote on
going-
to let you
we're-
present it later, or what are we?
No.
gonna vote on?
No, Brian has already said he's going to take it off the table, so we don't need to vote on it.
Yeah.
And so this is basically, he got clarification on it, so we're going to leave it at that, and Brian's going to take it off the table. Since it's his document, we do not need to vote on it.
Just for clarification, I heard Brian say he was going to review it and then possibly bring it back.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's what I
that is
heard.
what I said. So I
Yeah.
wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that with you,
Good.
Jim.
I don't
We
want
do
it
need
off
to
the
look at
table.
the schedule. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want it off the
Right.
table permanently.
No, but for right now,
Oh,
Brian
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
going,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for right
Yeah,
now,
thank you.
Brian is taking it off the table, and we'll look at it later on.
Thank
He
you.
wants to revisit this himself.
Well, I want to table it and then I'll
Yeah,
get back
yep,
with you. Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
table it, and then we'll go from there.
But
So,
Right.
so that was the
John?
last comment.
Okay. John,
and-
you had your hand up real
Yeah,
quick.
just a quick comment on that. I would suggest to Brian that he definitely work with Melissa on this a little bit, because most of what he's got here is, of course, is very good, but we are constrained by regulation imposed by the state, and what is written, we cannot even discuss that at a planning and zoning commission meeting or hearing. Most of what is there, so you got to be very careful in how you edit it, and not disagreeing with what you say here. It's very
Right.
important, of course, but that's the thing that needs to be considered for editing.
Right. Good point. Thank you, John.
So Brian, just to
Okay.
time check, it is 8 o'clock.
Right.
Did you want to try to finish going through? There were a couple of additional updates to the committee and then talk about the schedule. So what would you
I
like?
would like, if the committee will continue, I would like for us to complete our task of getting through all the comments and then getting a schedule set. Is the committee in agreement to do that? Let me re-ask the question. If you want to end our session now, and we would go to public comment, please say so. You don't need to vote, just say, that I want to end and be done for the night, and then we'll have to reschedule another meeting.
How long will this take? Do you have an idea?
I don't know what the other comments are. Melissa?
Well, there are no more you're done reviewing the comments. We just have a few more slides to go through that gives 2 updates on 2 policies that were discussed 2 weeks ago. And then just go through your final public comments, committee final thoughts, and the schedule. So maybe a half hour.
Oh, Lord. Oh, sorry, I didn't know it was on speed.
Maybe not that long if we go faster.
Yeah,
We can go fast. Okay. Let's continue and let's get done as much as we can so we don't have to schedule another meeting.
I'll do a new share then. I'll go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so you did have one additional letter. So you reviewed the comments to committee. We need to talk about the policies from May 12th. And also you did receive a letter from Iris Westdyke. And I know that you all, the committee was sent this letter earlier. It was sent in, it was received May 12th in our offices.
Okay. Can you bring that letter up, please?
Yes. Let me grab it.
Liz, your hand is still up. Is that intentional? Thank you.
Sorry, let me. Get my computer to cooperate here. Okay, there it is. Do you see that now?
Yes.
And I can read that if you like, Brian.
Yes, read it quickly, please.
A recent review of the Timberline Fernwood area plan published on the county website. You can see when looking at the charts, there's been gradual increase in population to 10,000 in our small community. As the population has increased, senior citizens have declined, new families have moved into the area. Incomes have increased according to the cost of living. Educational needs have increased over time. The Doney Park area already needs a middle school built to support its local students. I understand the need to improve the transportation system and recreational opportunities in our community. However, the roads, have become increasingly congested and our schools are at their present capacity. The question of water is always a concern. In my opinion, we should impose a 5-year building moratorium in Doney Park. This would allow the quality of our community to maintain its high standards and provide our children with a good education. We also need to ensure infrastructure is built first. The schools need to be built and ready for children and other new communities will bring. This and other new communities will bring. Our children do not need to suffer with overcrowding and limited resources while infrastructure is caught up. Our roads also need to address before new communities are built. This will ensure our new residents and all will be able to commute safely in our neighborhoods and around town. We do not need to constantly need to be playing catch up. We do not need to spend our tax money continuously revising these areas because we failed to see what would be needed to support our communities as they grow. Let's be prepared before.
Okay, I'd like to thank Miss Westdyke or Mrs., however you are. This is a more of a vision, her vision, and I don't see a specific request in there for us to act on. It does say that in her opinion, we should impose a 5-year building moratorium in Doney Park. We can't do that. That's outside of our scope of authority. In terms of the schools, my understanding, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong on this, the Cromer School is currently not at its capacity.
That's what we heard from the school district.
Yes. So, and my sense is that Cromer School, those teachers and the administration, they're doing a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where to go with this. Any comments from the committee? Liz?
Yes, I was told by my husband that in 1975 or 76, mid-70s, there was a moratorium on more meters in Doney Park, which limited growth and which limited housing. And I said, wow, it was back then.
Okay.
He goes, yeah, people were concerned in 70s. But then I found out from Doney Park Water because I asked them, I called them after he said this to me, and they said the meters represented they didn't have enough wells to supply water. But there was a moratorium on the meters.
That was, I remember that because your husband and I were talking about it back then. And that moratorium was due to lack of infrastructure to supply the water.
Yeah, I found that out after I called Doney Park, but they have had moratoriums out here. It's not like it hasn't been brought up before. Yeah.
in the context of this letter, is there anything you see that we need to do?
Well, I think I've heard several times, just no one's ever made comments. Why don't we figure out our roads and our water before we let any more building occur out here? I mean, no one's written it, but it's been in conversation.
Well,
There's
we-
no basis to impose a building moratorium. That's a specific legal action that the board would have to take, and there's simply no reason for that in
Yeah.
Doney Park Timberline Fernwood.
No, I know. I just said that it's been proposed before, but
Okay,
for other reasons. Yeah. I don't know what to do. I don't know what legal or not. I mean,
okay,
it would be great
thank
if
you.
we could.
Bernice, your quick comment, please.
Yes, thank you. I think there is a basis for a moratorium on building in Doney Park. I agree with that because of our fire department situation and also our water department situation. We don't even have water fire hydrants that can work without polluting our system. There's a lot of infrastructure with the Doney Park Water Company that is really taxed with the increased growth that we have now. We have a lot of people that are losing pressure really badly now. And next year they're going to be doing a engineering study on what
Okay.
it will take to bring us up to date. And that's going to increase our water rates. It's going to increase our taxes. You know, there's just
So,
a lot of, I think that there is justification for a moratorium on buildings.
okay. While I understand your perspective, we don't have the authority to do that. This committee does not have that authority. Melissa, your comment, please.
That's what I was going to point out. That's guided by state statute, and we simply do not have the reason for it at this time. And that would be imposed by the Board of Supervisors in compliance with state statute. So that is simply a brand new topic that frankly, it would not have any standing at this point.
Right. Okay, so I think we thank Mrs. Westdyke for her comments, and let's move on to the next comments.
Okay, hold on, Brian. I'm going to minimize this.
Okay. I like
Lost-
that.
I'm lost in my own screen. I'm sorry. Okay.
That was a great
That's
picture.
a great picture.
Oh, thank you. That was a fun day. That Raven posed for me. Okay, so then the next slide would be this one. And so we talked extensively, and Bernice brought this up 2 weeks ago, about the comment on truck traffic on Townsend Winona in particular. And I've been in touch with our Public Works Department, and they reminded me, frankly, that Townsend Winona is constructed to be what's called a minor arterial. And here's the definition of a minor arterial right out of our comprehensive plan. It's a type of roadway or transportation corridor that links cities, towns, and other traffic generators. Minor arterials attract traffic travel over long distances, provide inter-county and some intra-county service, and generally connect to other arterial roadways or collector roadways. The policy that we talked about last time, 2 weeks ago, was this: the county is encouraged to work with ADOT to discourage the use of county roads as shortcuts, such as Townsend Winona, by non-local commercial trucks. So there was quite a bit of discussion to come up with that. So since that meeting, then, like I said, I've been in touch with Public Works. They clarified that Townsend Winona is a minor arterial built and designed specifically to handle that type of traffic. So trucks using that road, it's absolutely constructed for that type of traffic. Now, I also learned, though, that there's another effort that's been going on parallel to this effort, where there's going to be brought either in August or possibly the next month, possibly in September, a new potential policy that would work to limit truck traffic on local and collector roads in Doney Park. This is something that I just found out since our last meeting. So this has been going, and this is an effort being led by Public Works. So what I would suggest instead of, because Public Works, they were pretty clear that they would not be able to, they would not feel that they could support a policy limiting truck traffic on towns in Winona, but they are working on this other effort to limit truck traffic on local and collector roads. So I would suggest instead writing a policy that the area plan supports county efforts to limit truck traffic on local and collector roads in the planning area.
So we have a proposal from Melissa that we use her just stated the area plan supports county efforts to limit truck traffic on local and collector roads in the planning area in lieu of the previously stated TC 35. If you agree in adopting Melissa's proposed, it's the instead TC 35, please click on green. If you want to reject her suggested edit, please hit red.
Could I ask a question before, because I don't understand the designation of towns in Winona? It is a minor arterial road, correct?
Right.
That's right.
Yes. It was designed and built there.
Could it be redesignated a collector road?
I doubt it. It was
So
designed to be.
It would
a
have to
minor
be
arterial.
rebuilt completely.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would keep it off of Cokefield Road south and Silver Saddle Road?
No, see,
I don't know. I believe Cokefield Road may be the first priority, Bernice. I'm not 100% sure of what other roads would be addressed.
But what it does is it keeps it tries to limit truck traffic on like Cokefield, Silver Saddle, Slayton Ranch, Neptune, so forth.
And I don't know all the details. I haven't read the policy. I don't know that it's complete yet. So that would be something, to keep an eye on, but it's going to be separate from this planning process.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're in
wait a
favor
minute, I
of,
have something to ask. I have my hand up.
oh, excuse me, Liz.
Sure. That's okay, brother. My question is this. The comment that we got was specifically addressing an arterial, which was Towns of Winona. They were concerned about bicyclists and people on Towns of Winona. But this instead, TC 35 is just talking about collectors and local roads. And I know Towns of Winona is built for heavy trucks, but the comment that I thought we were reviewing and discussing was the problem was Towns of Winona being flooded by trucks and local and collector roads. But that means we just wipe out Towns of Winona and said these people or the comments that address Towns of Winona, we can't address it because that's an arterial. And so even though the comment that started this whole discussion was about Towns of Winona, we're going to say, no, we can't address that.
There may not be a good way to address it because that was built and designed to be a minor arterial.
Because remember, we even discussed it. I said, the last meeting, I said, well, can that road even take big trucks? And you go, I got to look into that. Because I remember you said, yeah, I don't know. So it's built to do that. So that means we can't limit it because
That's correct.
that was its function to begin with. Okay, I just want to make sure the comment was addressed because it wasn't, oh, I'm really worried about local and collector. It was specifically Towns of Winona. So it's just out of our hands. So
Okay.
I guess Okay. I
That's
just wanna make
right.
sure it was
There,
addressed.
there still may be concerns with truck traffic and, apparently there have been other comments made that we necessarily haven't
Right.
heard.
Even,
that's-
even though it's a county road and it's a local road also, because this and TC 35
Ah,
says you
local,
can limit
right.
truck traffic on local and collector
Good
roads.
point.
Those are different
Ye-
technical designations than arterial.
So Tens
Well-
of Winona isn't a local road, even though it's a county road?
It's technically called a minor arterial, not
So
local.
an example of a local road would be like, I live on Beauty Way. Liz lives on Jupiter. Whereas a collector road would be like Coke Field or Slayton Ranch or Starfield.
I think that though on our map, I think we're considered private roads or private community
Well,
roads. I don't
okay.
think they use
I
the
can
word
read you the
local.
definition right now because it's in your glossary. Local
Perfect,
roadway,
okay.
a street that provides access to land parcels primarily residential, adjacent to the collector network and serves travel over relatively short distances. So you contrast that to minor arterial. It's very different.
Okay, good. Okay, okay.
All right, so
Yep.
could I have the committee members vote on adoption of the proposed instead TC 35 statement? Green means to adopt, red means to reject.
So if we reject it, there's not gonna be further discussion. Okay. Shoot, I don't know.
I'm not sure where we go from there.
Hmm,
We don't end at 8:30.
right.
It would stay like it is.
Yeah,
We have
because I just
4
think that Towns of Winona is kind of local, Melissa, because it does go into communities, right?
Okay, but it is by definition a minor arterial road,
Unless we change that definition.
and you're not going to change it.
We've got
Okay.
4 green and 1 red.
Okay, so it passes. We adopt it, and let's move on to our next topic, please.
Okay, and it's an update. You all had asked that we consult legal on the question of how to word this new water resource policy. And the advice was to make that a more generic statement. So the policy that was crafted 2 weeks ago was this: to the extent allowed by state law, the county should work with federal, state, and other agencies to be informed and evaluate the capacity and useful life of the aquifer supplying Doney Park Timberline Fernwood. And to be more general and actually make it a broader statement, this is a suggested policy: to the extent allowed by state law, comma, local, state, federal, and other agencies should become informed and evaluate the capacity and useful life of the aquifer supplying Doney Park Timberline Fernwood. So this would actually make it a broader effort that could include the county, Doney Park Water, USGS, other agencies that are charged with monitoring the aquifer. And Brian might have more to add to that.
Actually, I don't.
Okay.
I think the way that the revised edit is presented is better than the previous one, because it says you go to the agencies as opposed to requiring the county to work with those different agencies. So it enables the county to contact them and push them, but it does not put the county in the, how shall I say this, in the conundrum of not being able to deal with water and yet having to deal with water. That makes sense?
I liked how you put that.
Yeah, I mean, legally, the county can't do it, but by golly, they got to. So, never mind. So if you want to adopt the statement that says instead WR5, select the green. If you want to retain what is stated new WR5, select red.
Brian, could you rephrase that? I'm sorry, I wasn't quite clear. Green is to adopt the new one?
Green is to adopt the one proposed by the legal that that is introduced by instead WR5.
Thank you for clarifying.
Red is new WR5.
We have 6 screens.
Okay. 6 greens, it's adopted. Let's move on, please, Melissa.
So that was it as far as open house public comments, other comments, and policy updates. And now we can move on and talk about your schedule.
Okay. So Melissa has it stated there.
And I'm sorry, I don't know why I put June 29th before June 7th.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
It's not meant to be that way. So June 7th is before June 29th. And we do have a Board of Supervisors work session scheduled, and that's where they get updates on 3 initiatives: the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood Area Plan, the Flagstaff Regional Plan, and the county's comprehensive plan. So that's open to the public, but no decisions are made. It's a work session for them to learn about what's going on.
And so are we at a point now with our document that we would be presenting our draft document to the Board of Supervisors work session?
No, they won't be seeing the draft document. We have about an hour with them to cover these 3 big topics. So we will just give them an overview of when the process started. They've had one overview. It's been a while. Talk about your open houses. We'll talk about your draft vision statement, the survey pretty much, and where the committee wants to go. So that again is something that I can send you all a link to that. The work sessions are all open to the public to listen in on.
Okay.
Going back to the first line, June 29th, then, is when we would like to schedule your area plan for a Planning and Zoning Commission study session. So again, that's where they get an update as to what they would have on their agenda for the next month. So that's a preview for them on your area plan, which would be right now is the schedule is to have that at Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing July 27th. And that's when the Planning Commission would actually look at the entire draft with all the updates and then make a recommendation forward to the Board of Supervisors. Or not, the Planning Commission could choose to continue it if there were reasons that they felt they needed to do that. But if they recommended it forward for board consideration, then that could be scheduled for September 13th. And these are regular hearing dates.
Okay. Now, who would be attending these sessions?
Well, planning staff makes the presentation, and of course, all the committee members, we would encourage all of you to attend the meeting. They've been all virtual still. And then there are opportunities for obviously the public to speak. And then I'm sure the Planning Commission and the board would want to hear from the committee as well. So they are noticed public hearings.
And do you have a time at which these meetings are going to happen?
Well, so they begin at a certain time. Planning and Zoning Commission public hearings always begin at 5:30. They're on the last Wednesday of the month. The Board of Supervisor public hearings begin at 6 o'clock, and that would be on the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay, so the June 29th meeting would be at 5:30, and would that be?
Actually, the study session begins at 4 o'clock. The public hearing begins at 5:30.
Okay,
And the work session on June 7th, I believe that is scheduled for 3:15 or 3:30, but sometimes those shift. So I would have, we just have to, usually we log on and wait until they get to that item. Because the board has a big work session agenda. They're covering a lot of different topics.
Right. Okay, June 7th. I'm just trying to make sure I get things recorded correctly.
And I can send everybody these dates, obviously, but then if our next slide here is, the public comment and committee final thoughts. So this is something that you all may want to talk about right now. Because we do need to move forward. We didn't have another committee meeting scheduled. If there are some items that need to be wrapped up, then we'll want to talk about that so that we can move forward with these dates.
Okay, I see two hands that are up. Let me start with Liz Baldwin.
I'm just clarifying, it's not about these dates because I was under the impression we had other things to comment on tonight because I thought you said an email, and correct me if I'm wrong, that said we have to talk about comments that said to committee.
That's what
tonight
you looked
also.
at.
We
Huh?
did that.
Well, no, we looked at ones just from Bernice and Ron. I thought there's a whole list of them, 1 to 5, 1 to 6.
They were all marked to committee.
Right, and I thought you said to review those. Did I misunderstand that then? Yeah, I guess I did. Okay, never mind. I thought that's what I was gonna say. Oh my goodness, we've got to
Okay.
address all these other comments. Okay, sorry, me bad.
Thank you. John Ruggles.
I would like to clarify something about the Board of Supervisors and also the Planning and Zoning Commission. At a study session, no action is taken. In other words, there is no vote to go forward. There are no, it is simply an informational session. And people should be aware of that if they're planning on attending electronically, because it is a distinction that really needs to be made. There is typically no public comment taken during a study session.
Thank you. Okay. John, you just made your comment. I see no other hands up.
My hand is up.
Well, that's because I am looking at different people. Okay, quickly, please.
Okay, can we make sure, I know the draft plan isn't up on the website right now. Can we make sure that the draft plan is up on the website by time for people to read it before June 7th for the Board of Supervisors work session?
I don't know if
Melissa?
it'll be up by the work session. They're not going to get the draft plan at the work session.
Oh, what will they get? Just a summary?
They have a staff report that covers those 3 topics. And then there'll be a presentation, but they're not going to get the entire draft plan at the work session.
Okay, when can we have that up on the website?
That partly depends on when the committee has said that you're not going to need to review any additional policies. And it also partly depends on when I can get, we've got to have those maps revised based on the annexation. So there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen still.
Mhm.
We would definitely have it done prior to the Planning Commission study session, June 29th.
Okay. Also, I made some comments and some of them were taken care of. We didn't talk about the others. I think it's really important. Somebody did mention area ranchers in a comment. I don't know if it was on a verbal comment or what it was, but I think it's really important to support the ranchers and the hunters because they help us preserve our forest, and the cattle eat a lot of the grass that is a fire fuel. Also, I
Okay.
think in light of the tunnel fire that we should This was in my comments that we overlooked. That
Okay,
in light of the
Bernice.
forest fire, we should stop, we should take out allowing people to camp next to in the forest next to residential property.
So,
We didn't look at my comments.
Maybe you could bring this up
Wouldn't it-
during committee final thoughts.
yes,
Okay,
do
sure,
that.
thank you.
I still
Okay,
think we need
let me go to public comment. Those members of the public, the community, if you would like to share with us, please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes. And Jessica, if you could help me with the timing on that.
Yep.
Thank you. Any community members that wish to speak to the committee? Hearing none. Let's go to committee final thoughts. Members of the committee who have some final thoughts. Bernice?
Ta-da. Okay. First, there was a comment that I don't think we talked about, that somebody said there were limestone layers east of Flagstaff that could affect groundwater contamination.
Well,
And
See, that's what I'm talking about. There were comments that I don't think we addressed that we were supposed to tonight.
well,
I gotta check the email because
okay, wait a minute. First of all, I'm not sure how we're going to address limestone, faults in the limestone.
the fissures.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to do about it?
Well, we could find out more information about it because that could affect any industrial or commercial or even residential development out there. If we put a bunch of residential collective houses out there with alternative
Okay.
septic systems, that could make a difference. Oh, let's see, the other thing, we're going to come back to residential collective housing that I had a big concern over, that I think we should go back to group homes. I do think we ought to support the area ranchers and
right, you
hunters.
said that.
And
that wasn't-
also we should go back and look at how we were going to encourage the Forest Service to allow car camping in the forest right next to private land. And right now the Forest Service doesn't do that. And we're getting deeper into a drought. We're getting higher risk of forest fires. I don't think it's a good time to do that. Maybe down the road when we get more rain and it's safer to have camping closer to residential.
Okay,
I think
so
it would be
isn't-
reasonable.
All these,
hold on, Liz, please.
okay,
I believe that the Forest Service does have a policy, or they have signage. I can't remember which. I think they have signage that says that you cannot camp within a half mile of the Forest Service boundary.
Right, but our area plan, you might not have been at the meeting where it was voted on to allow camping next to the residential and just not allow the
a minute,
campfires.
We can't vote on what the Forest Service allows.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But we can't encourage we don't need to encourage the Forest Service to allow camping next to the residential areas. Brian, you might want to look that one up in the area plan because we did change that to
We
allow
did.
for car camping.
Okay,
Yeah.
Melissa, do you have a comment?
Well, what I'm hearing is it sounds like there may be material for one more meeting. And I'm gonna just suggest that you discuss that as part of your committee final thoughts. And honestly, part of that, the only possible date that would be available would be next Thursday, June 2nd. So I'll leave you with that staff final thought.
Okay, so Thursday, June 2nd. Okay, let me get a read of, if you can make a meeting, would that be a 6 o'clock meeting or a 5 o'clock meeting?
We do
Melissa,
3 o'clock.
say that again.
That'd be hard for the public.
what time are you talking about on June 2nd?
Well, that's really up to you. I was kidding, but that's really up to the committee.
Right, but we've been going with 5 o'clock sometimes and 6 o'clock other times.
Is it going to be a mini meeting?
A mini
Or do you
meeting
think
is
it-
a good idea.
If it's
Okay.
going to be a
I think so
mini,
too.
mini
If
If you
meeting,
feel
we
that you
normally
can fit,
go,
if you
6
feel that you
o'clock.
can finish in a mini meeting.
Okay, so let's go 6 o'clock. June 2nd, and that's a Thursday.
That's 1 week from today, and I would suggest that you be very specific about what you're intending to achieve then. So realizing that, the time is, we're moving into the time where we need to spend some days getting the details of the plan finalized for you.
Right, so you're talking about staff getting the details of the plan finalized.
Correct.
Okay,
Will we have the information
So-
about the residential collective housing by then?
I don't know.
If this is our final meeting, it would probably be a good thing.
Well, we will try, but that's out of my control. People who can, Melissa, your hand is still up. Are you wanting to comment
No,
again?
I'll take it down. That was,
Okay. Those people who can meet at, okay, the objective. Well, let me ask Melissa first. I think Bernice had like 5 or 6 items that we haven't gone through, something like that. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay, so there's that. What other material do we have that we need to cover?
nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay, so 6 o'clock, Thursday, June the 2nd. If you can make that meeting, please indicate with a green. If you cannot make the meeting, please indicate with a red.
Got 7 greens so far.
Okay, so we will meet 6 PM Thursday with our last edits.
That is 1 week from today.
is
Yes.
this our last meeting of the area plan committee?
Well,
Who's-
I would actually, it could be, I mean, it might be helpful. This is up to you all. If, there would need to be other meetings, maybe after the planning commission study, study session but the last actual working meeting where you need to, make these decisions. So,
Yeah, I think there's gonna be other logistics meetings. Meaning, Board of Supervisor preparing for P and Z and so forth.
well, those will be meetings that you are certainly, encouraged to participate in.
Right. Okay. So we're confirmed on that. Any other final thoughts from the committee?
Well, you got a couple of us here, Brian.
Okay, John Ruggles?
I will just reiterate what Melissa said about being able to participate after this committee meeting process is done at
Right,
both the Planning and Zoning Commission level, which will be I don't remember what the date on that is, but that's an open public hearing. And the same thing at the Board of Supervisors when recommendation goes forward from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the board.
right. Thank you for that reminder. Any other committee members?
What is the date of the BOS public hearing? I have a something blocking my number there.
Well, it's,
September 13th.
13th. Okay, thank you. I thought it was 18th.
And Brian, I would like to mention that you did say you were going to review your suggested goal and policy and
Yes.
possibly rewrite. That would be the other
Yes.
item to look at.
okay. Oh, shoot. Okay. I will attempt to get that done soon.
Melissa, are we getting any other letters from any people in the public?
I haven't gotten anything. The last one we got was the letter from Iris Westdyke.
Okay.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you very much. Was there any other comment from committee members? With that, folks, thank you very much. And yes, go eat your pizza. And have a wonderful week.
You do.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Everybody, and stay safe.
Hey, good night, everyone. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you,
Good night.
John. Jim Clifford, if you'd stay on for just a minute, please.
Sure, I could do that.
Thank you.